Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Guilty Party. 2.5 hours after touching down in Innsbruck and boarding the SUV that waited to greet her, Amelia Carver's overnight expedition came to an end at a squat, crumbling structure in the rugged terrain of Samonatal Valley, from Dublin to Austria to Liechtenstein, from 12 a.m. to 6, from civilization to desolation, and she still didn't know if it was worth it. Looking at the building, little more than an abandoned mound of concrete, it was difficult to see how it could be. She hadn't accomplished anything of note since last year. She wasn't expecting to receive any awards. There were no contemporaries she still wanted to meet, and even if, by some chance, she was to be acknowledged for her endeavors, she had no desire to receive a tacky statue. Not that it mattered. She was contracted to be here, so she was. At least this year promised to be different, since Bertram was introducing something new, and she'd made her own assumptions about what that meant. A special guest, an unexpected attendee, one that would be worth turning up for if it was him. "So now, you're not gonna throw me a bone?" she asked the driver as he stopped by the secret military installation, which has been constructed by Nazi forces during World War II. Not so much as a nod or shake of the head, the driver, mannequin-like in black suit and mirrored sunglasses, said precisely as many words as he'd said since collecting her at the airport. A sum total of 0. "Cool," said his fare, adjusting the Venetian half-mask that covered the left of her face before popping the passenger door, the fabric of her crimson gown rustling as she got out. "Good talk. Thanks for the riveting repartee." Out of the vehicle, in the pale morning light, Amelia shut the door and straightened her skirt. Gravel spat like an angry rattlesnake as the driver stomped the gas and crunched away. "Rude," said Amelia, tottering on heels towards the entrance, a rusted steel door partially concealed by tangled vines. Exactly the kind of place she wanted to spend the first evening of the last month of the year, when she could be curled up watching TV. But here she was, pushing through a squealing slab of history to meet another expressionless brute, who was as conversational as the one who'd dropped her off. "Hey," she said, as the passage she'd entered closed around her. "Am I last again? I'm always late." "Shucks." The grunt showed no emotion while placing a barcode scanner type device against the scar on her neck, allowing a beep to confirm her identity. While he did this, she removed her phone from her clutch and tapped on it to display the invite she'd received, which was also scanned and accepted. Once done, the guard stepped aside, allowing her access to a drape-covered door. "Thanks," Amelia said, maintaining eye contact with the goon while adjusting her breasts. "So, is it true? Is it abyss?" No response. The bouncer flicked his eyes back to the wall. Amelia sighed and pulled the drape aside, stepping into a better lit chamber that she lost sight of immediately when a pair of calloused hands fell over her eyes. "Guess who?" came a gravelly voice, laced with playful menace. Amelia peeled the hands away and turned to face their owner. A beast of a man wearing jeans, a white cotton waistcoat, and a wolf's head mask. Blue eyes stared from its sockets, his lips curled up within its maw. Wolfclaw, always a pleasure. Of all the associates she'd met since joining the network, Wolfclaw was the one she liked most. He had a sense of humor to go with his violent nature, and was capable of faking social niceties. "Carver," he greeted. "Thought it was you I heard coming in behind me, looking pasty as ever. Still not getting any sun? Still got the same machete?" Amelia asked, peering over his shoulder at the curved weapon strapped to his back. "Thought it might have broke from overuse. Heard it's taken 30 heads this year. Not jealous. Old Betsy's stronger than she looks." The masked man grinned. "What about you? I remember you saying last year how your kill count was too low. Any success ramping things up?" "In Ireland, not as much as I'd like," she said, rolling her visible eye, the taped-up hole of her masquerade mask concealing the empty socket of the other. "Came in with a solid 13, 3 more than last year, but shy of the 20 I wanted. An improvement is an improvement, and you are a more discerning kind of killer. Targeting assholes who mock the less fortunate and lack empathy is a task in and of itself. Unless you're starting to feel less philanthropic." "Nope." Amelia shook her head, turning away from the wolf-headed killer. "If I'm compelled to get my hands dirty, may as well clean some shit up. Anyway, never mind that. We better grab seats if there's any left. Bertram starts on time, and we're late." The interior of the chamber had been prepared for Bertram's event. Rows of chairs arranged before a makeshift stage holding a podium. Spotlights casting shadows on red curtained walls. The seats were occupied by figures in various states, some in their work clothes, boiler suits, leather aprons, lab coats, military fatigues. Others in more casual attire, some sporting face coverings, canvas bags, chrome constructions, cliched hockey masks, or things that had been assembled from strips of flesh. Some displaying faces not even mothers could love, but all unmistakably killers. "Indeed," said Wolfclaw, following Amelia towards the front, where she'd spotted a pair of vacant seats. "Wouldn't do to be kicked out when I'm in with a chance of best massacre. You deserve an award for that." Amelia nodded. "Speaking of awards, I guess you heard about the new one?" Wolfclaw said, turning into the front row behind her. Lifetime Achievement Award. Arguably long overdue for a ceremony that honors psycho killers. Fuckers are near immortal. The question is, who's the inaugural recipient? Amelia finished, nodding at the motley crew of weird and wonderful murderers she passed as she made her way to a seat. You know what they've been saying on Instagram? Well, it's got to be Abyss, Wolfclaw said, taking a seat alongside her. How many times did he win Killer of the Year? 12? Does anyone have a better record? Not only that. Best dismemberment, most depraved violation, goriest cut. You name it, he got it. Every year for a decade, until he vanished. He's the GOAT. Would be an insult to give it to anyone else. The question is he alive? All the rumors that circulate about him being locked away by the government, retiring to live as a lumberjack, being turned into mints by a final girl? Fuck, Wolfclaw gasped as she organized her dress on her chair. I know, the ultimate humiliation for serial slashers. Not that, Wolfclaw interrupted, touching her arm. That. Amelia followed his gaze to the left of the stage, where 3 men stood partially obscured behind curtains. 2 of Bertram's goons, and him, clad in an oil-stained pair of overalls, feet stuffed into boots that were coming apart, head concealed by a latex S&M hood, replete with zips, straps, and buckles. The 7-foot-tall, hulking form was unmistakably Abyss. The shifting, awkward posture, the way his arms flexed, the movement of his head, glitching like stop-motion animation. She'd only seen videos, but she knew it was him. Wolfclaw was squinting behind his mask as he studied the granddaddy of killers. He's bulkier than I expected, taller. But look how they're restraining him. Is that a neck manacle connected to prods? Amelia had noticed this too. But before she could consider it, the lights dimmed and the piped music came to a halt. A hush fell over the crowd, and all eyes went to the stage as the curtain on the right was thrown back, allowing a bearded man in a suit to stride out, beckoning applause, which he got in buckets from all, because this was their benefactor, Bertram Belasco, long-serving head of the serial killer network. Amelia took part in the adulation as he soaked it up. In the 5 years since he found her and signed her up to his club, she'd come to respect him like everyone else. Being selected was nothing short of an honor. It meant her killer credentials were on point. It meant, despite the exorbitant subscription fee Bertram charged for membership, that she had access to all SK network resources: anonymity, medical aid, protection, and sanctuary when required. Luckily, she hadn't needed to avail of much yet, being a small fish in the pond. A little treatment for wounds, some hacking, to remove her image from CCTV footage. All in a day's work for the network. "Welcome, friends," Bertram said, when the applause died down. "Delighted to see you all again. Our venue is a little less luxurious than usual, but there's a reason for that, one that will become clear soon. Before we start, I want to take a moment to say that this year's nominees for our various awards were highly impressive. Kill of the Year, Sickest Mutilation, Most Creative Execution. You've outdone yourselves, and I want to congratulate everyone for their efforts. You've made me proud, and, well, just well done." "Weird start," Wolfclaw whispered, and Amelia nodded. Bertram seemed more somber than usual. "However," he blurted then, perking up as his eyes went to Abyss, "before we get to that," a surprise, a murmur rippled through the crowd, and Amelia felt goosebumps on her arms. "As you know from my invite," their host went on, "we have a special award tonight. And along with it comes a special guest. There's been a lot of speculation online as to who it might be, with one particular name being mooted more than others. Well, I don't want to keep you or him waiting any longer, so let's kick things off with our first ever Lifetime Achievement Award. Won't you join me, please, in welcoming Abyss?" Applause filled the room as Abyss was guided out by the goons. His footsteps as he stomped to the podium were louder than the chants and cheers around her. But why was he secured like that? Was he here against his will? Was he a danger to his own kind? "I know this looks weird," said Bertram, as Abyss was brought to a halt alongside him, quivering as though volts flowed into his neck. But sadly, dear Abyss is not the force of nature he used to be. He's had to keep a low profile these last 10 years. 2 decades as the world's most prolific serial killer is something that can take a toll. He absorbed more pure guilt than anyone before him, and handled it like a trooper. But there's a limit to all things. And 10 years ago today, he reached his. He had to be put away for everyone's safety. Just one more kill would have broken him, released the guilt. And we weren't ready. "What's he talking about?" Wolfclaw hissed. Amelia shook her head. She had no idea. But whatever it was, it had the potential to be epic. As he spoke, Bertram retrieved an award from behind the podium. A grotesque creation made of twisted steel. "For you," he continued, presenting the award to the monster. "With gratitude. But this isn't your true reward. A polished lump of metal in your hands is nothing but a weapon. I know what you'd really like is closure." Abyss closed his fist around the award, gripping it like a bludgeon, while Bertram raised an arm and clicked his fingers. Amelia sat up in her chair, watching the curtains at the back of the stage part, and another suited mook wheel out a crate. "This is different," said Wolfclaw. "What's the old boy up to? Does everyone remember Diamond Lagoon, 1995? Abyss's most infamous rampage. He took out an entire settlement in one night. An incredible feat of savagery. 67 residents, 66 victims, because one slipped through the net. A plucky young girl. Don't you hate them? We've all been frustrated by one of those. For Abyss, though, in a 20-year reign of terror, she was the only one who ever got away. The only blemish in an otherwise spotless career. And guess what? Bertram moved to the edge of the stage as his man undid latches on the crate. "We have her here tonight." Gasps in the crowd as the guard opened the box and a disheveled woman fell out, barely getting her hands in front of her before hitting the floor. Her face was lined with age. Her hair was gray. She whimpered where she'd landed by Abyss, whose head was turned down as he watched. "No way," Amelia said, as Bertram and his goons walked off the stage. "Are we going to see a live kill?" "You're free, Abyss," Bertram called as he slipped through the curtains. "Let it go." The crowd had gotten to their feet, and Amelia joined them, all eyes on the scene, keen to see what would happen next. And what happened next was like watching a movie sped up. 2x, Abyss threw his head back and howled. The woman screamed up at his hood. Abyss drove the trophy into her skull. The onlookers in the crowd cheered and jumped. Amelia's mouth fell open. Wolfclaw whistled. Abyss turned to the crowd and started to shudder. Not from being electrocuted, from something else. What was it Bertram had said? Amelia wondered. One more kill would have broken him, released the guilt. The shuddering turned to convulsions, and Abyss roared. Not now in fury, but in pain. He staggered, his body shaking violently. His head jerked back, and with a sickening crack, it split open, ripping through latex and spilling blood and bone to the floor. 3x. Black mist poured from his mask. Smoky tendrils shot forth, snaking through the air and filling the room. Writhing, maleficent tentacles that multiplied and wriggled like worms before plunging into the heads of those below, squeezing screams from their lungs. Their bodies convulsed, and their faces contorted as the guilt from Abyss took control. Amelia watched chaos unfold, beginning with Wolfclaw, who stared wide-eyed in horror from his mask as he took his machete, lifted it to his neck, and sliced through. Hot, scarlet liquid splattered her face as she looked away, her eye falling on the killers behind her, who were turning their weapons on themselves, tearing at flesh, gouging out eyes, ripping their own jaws off in a frenzy. 4x. Tendrils of mist withdrew from falling bodies, returned to the hovering mass over Abyss's corpse. Amelia tottered, unsteady, on heels slipping in blood. The screams were abating. The crowd was diminishing. Not many remained on their feet. Not many continued to be overwhelmed by the guilt of their actions, encouraged by the fingers of mist that had entered their brains. All of their brains, even hers. And that's when she realized she too had been invaded. But she, alone, was still standing, with a tendril of smoke connecting her to the pulsating mass, which was slowly drifting towards her from the stage. Drifting, oozing, throbbing, shrinking as it flowed into her head, filling her mind with images of her victims, bullies, narcissists, sociopaths, bigots, gaslighters, abusers, jerks. Am I supposed to feel bad for killing them? Her inner voice queried. Am I supposed to break under the weight of massive guilt? And that's when someone hit. Pause. I knew it would be you. A voice behind her, Bertram's, said, and she turned, the last of the guilt devouring her soul. Thought we'd have more time to nurture your talent, but Abyss's willpower was waning. He was going to release it soon, one last murder or not. And it needed to happen in a controlled environment. It needed to feast after being locked away for so long. And it needed to choose a new host. What is it? Amelia asked, aware of fresh darkness inside her. A force as old as time, Bertram said, taking her hand. An insatiable force that needs to be fed. But keeping it fed is not easy. And keeping it restrained, even harder. You see what it does when it's not. But it takes a certain kind of person. Abyss was that person before. 30 years he held it, a record. But it fucked him up. He was a discerning killer too, once upon a time, an idealist. He focused his darkness, like you, till he was chosen. What have you done to me? I'm sorry, Bertram said, leading her away from the carnage. As its guardian, I have to oversee the transference. It's never easy, but it's necessary. I do it to keep the world safe, believe it or not. Safe from unstoppable evil. It picked you today because you could hold it. But it's going to change you over time. It will naturally make you more feral, less controlled. A rampaging beast, if I'm honest. But it will also make you a legend, the best of the best. With the guilty conscience fueling you, you'll be Killer of the Year for as long as you want. And the next Lifetime Achievement Award will be yours. Amelia's mind was racing. His words sounded insane, but she could feel it. A growing hunger that demanded to be sated. A hunger that would make her a queen. Then I suppose I have work to do, she said, her voice sharp like the switchblade in her clutch. Bertram nodded. And I've a new network to build. Welcome to your new life. Amelia Carver. Glad to be here, she replied, accepting a kiss to her hand. I look forward to carving a fresh abyss. Terminal. Dread 1. The announcement. The loudspeakers crackled to life, sending a sharp hiss of static through the cavernous, dimly lit terminal. The noise was jarring, a sudden intrusion in the uneasy silence that had settled over the travelers, who were slumped in their seats, fatigue etched deeply into their faces. The endless delays had worn them down, and now they were too exhausted to glance up. The air was thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp, worn-out carpets. A suffocating blend that only added to the growing sense of unease. Then, the announcement came, each word clear, yet eerily mechanical, carrying a disquieting undertone. Attention, all passengers. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, all flights are cancelled indefinitely. Please remain in the terminal. Do not leave the airport. We apologize for the inconvenience. The voice was devoid of emotion, a cold, detached command that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Murmurs of frustration, tinged with fear, spread among the passengers, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Overhead, the departure boards flickered, the once orderly rows of destinations and times now spiraling into chaos as every flight switched from delayed to canceled. The fluorescent lights above seemed to dim in unison, their sporadic flickering casting long, jittery shadows across the floor. The terminal, once bustling with the energy of travel, now felt vast, cold, and hollow. A tomb of missed connections and lost hope to the unseen. Hours dragged on, though no one could tell whether it was hours or mere minutes. Time had lost its grip, slipping through the cracks like the insidious cold that seeped into the bones of those huddled in the terminal. People tried to make themselves comfortable, reclining awkwardly on the hard, unyielding plastic chairs, some curling up on the cold, unforgiving floor. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes hollow, faces pale under the flickering lights. The airport staff, usually a constant presence, had vanished without a trace. The food courts stood empty, their colorful signs now dark, and the enticing smells of food had long faded. Even the ever-vigilant security personnel were nowhere to be found. The only sound was the low, relentless hum of the air conditioning. This dull drone draped the terminal in a blanket of oppressive silence. Occasionally, the rustle of a traveler shifting uncomfortably, or the faint tap of rain against the massive windows, broke the quiet. Still, these sounds only served to amplify the growing sense of isolation. The terminal's once familiar noises had transformed into something alien and unsettling. A young woman, clutching a frayed boarding pass like a lifeline, approached the information desk, her footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice trembling as it reverberated off the walls, swallowed by the emptiness surrounding her. "Is anyone here? What's going on?" Her voice lingered in the air, unanswered, before fading into the void. She turned back towards the scattered passengers, her heart pounding. Then, something caught her eye, a fleeting movement in the glass's reflection, a quick and fluid shadow slipping away into the dim corridors leading to the gates. She spun around, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The same lifeless scene. Yet something had changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with an unseen menace. It was as if the terminal itself was watching, waiting. Others began to sense it too. Paranoia spread like a contagion, infecting one passenger after another. Whispers grew in intensity as people shared their sightings. Dark shapes glimpsed from the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. A man, pale skin glistening with sweat, swore he saw a figure. No, something, standing in the shadows near the baggage claim, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. His voice cracked as he recounted the encounter, his gaze darting nervously around the terminal, as if expecting the shadow to return. 3. The departure. The terminal descended into a deeper, more oppressive gloom as night fell. The few remaining lights flickered and buzzed, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, their edges fraying as if they could reach out and ensnare the unwary. The temperature dropped, a biting chill creeping into the air, chilling the travelers. It was a cold that wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. A family huddled together near a gate, the mother clutching her children tightly, her eyes wide and wild as they darted around the room, watching the shadows with growing terror. A businessman, his suit now wrinkled and his tie askew, paced frantically near the exit doors, tugging at his tie as if it were strangling him. Others remained rooted to their seats, too afraid to move, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet wide open with fear. Sleep was not an option. The darkness held many unknowns and unseen threats. Then, a sound came from deep within the terminal, a low, rhythmic thudding, distant at first, but growing steadily louder. It was the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. But these weren't the footsteps of a person. They were too slow, too heavy, and each step seemed to reverberate with a dull finality. Like the tolling of a death knell, panic erupted. People screamed, bolting in all directions, their frantic movements chaotic and disoriented as they searched desperately for an escape. But the exits were sealed, the heavy glass doors locked tight, the windows impossibly thick, distorting the view outside into a surreal, shifting landscape that offered no hope of escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges. They moved with purpose now, fluid and sentient, slithering along the walls, creeping beneath doors, stretching across the floor like dark tendrils seeking out the terrified passengers. One by one, the travelers were claimed. The shadows reached out, ensnaring them and pulling them into the darkness. Their screams echoed briefly, only to be abruptly cut off as the shadows engulfed them and dragged them into the abyss. Those who tried to hide found no sanctuary. The shadows seeped into every crack and crevice, relentless in their pursuit. The terminal became a hunting ground. The shadows of the predators and the passengers their prey. For the truth, the terminal was silent once more, save for the occasional crackle of the intercom and the distant, echoing thuds that marked the end of yet another life. The air was thick with the lingering scent of fear and despair, a miasma that clung to the walls, the floor, and the air itself. Then, as if in response to the bloodshed, the final announcement came, its tone eerily calm, almost soothing. This is a final boarding call for Flight 66. Passengers, please proceed to Gate D for immediate departure. A small group remained, huddled together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and terror. They stared at each other with hollow eyes, their faces pale as the full horror of their situation sank in. The gate mentioned in the announcement was at the far end of the terminal, a place none had dared approach. It had always been shrouded in mystery, blocked off by barriers that hinted at endless construction, yet no progress was ever seen. Now, the barriers were gone, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led to a single gate. The gate loomed ominously at the end of the corridor, its door slightly ajar. A harsh, unnatural light spilled out from within, bathing the area in an eerie glow. The light was too bright, too white, too wrong. It wasn't the light of salvation or escape. It was the light of something far more sinister, a beacon drawing passengers into the unknown. Compelled by a force they couldn't resist, the survivors began to move toward the gate, their feet dragging as if weighed down by an invisible burden. The closer they got, the more they felt their very essence being pulled from them, their bodies dissolving into the shadows, their souls ripped from their forms and dragged into the eternal void that awaited beyond the gate. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the terminal plunged into complete darkness, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint, lingering whispers of the lost. In the deserted control room, empty screens flickered with static, showing footage of an empty terminal, devoid of life, as if no one had ever been there. Now, a silent, empty shell, the airport waited patiently for the next group of unsuspecting travelers, ready to ensnare them in its endless, inescapable darkness. The intercom crackled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, the world continued, blissfully unaware of the horrors within the terminal. Inside, the shadows waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, more victims would arrive, forever lost in the terminal's eternal night. Kala, the de Havilland. Twin Otter charter plane shuddered through gray clouds as its mouthy pilot wrestled with the controls, navigating toward the barely visible landing strip ahead. Like the plane's humming engines, the bearded Inuit's mouth hadn't stopped buzzing since we'd taken off from Iqaluit 3 hours before, and my tolerance for both noises had grown slim. Happily, the end of this ordeal was in sight. The small hamlet Mitimatalik, known as Pond Inlet, which we were rocking and tilting down towards. From this vantage point, and in this dawn greeting, sleet-spitting weather, the village at the northernmost tip of Baffin Island appeared little more than a shadowy cluster of shacks dwarfed by glaciers in the distance. It looked every bit the town at the end of the world it was, and exactly the kind of place you'd find someone like her. "I'm just sayin'," the pilot continued, having received approval to land. "I get it, the dating world's tough, but comin' all the way to Mitimatalik for a woman? All she wants is a ticket out of this dump. No amount of hot flesh on a cold night is worth being taken for a ride." I forced another smile, though my lips were resistant, watching the landing strip lights glow brighter. "Like I said, she's got a wonderful personality," I said, for the 15th time. "You don't have to worry. Not everyone's a scammer, spoken like a love-struck fool with more money than sense." The pilot laughed. "Well, I hope it goes okay. At least you've got your return flight booked. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. But if you're not here, with or without your girl, I'll be gone. No refunds." I nodded, staring out at the endless expanse of snow that had become visible as dawn broke. Calling it dawn at 10 to noon seemed wrong, but that's what it was this time of year, during Nunavut's polar night, when the sun barely rose above the horizon and daylight, more twilight, didn't last long. A 1 to 2 hour period of faint light that quickly retreated to darkness. It suited me fine, because it suited Kala, December 5th. The body of 35-year-old Naki Pakta is discovered in Rankin Inlet, Kivalik, having bled out from multiple stab wounds. The nature of the injuries is baffling. The star-shaped structure of the wounds suggests they were inflicted from within. No murder weapon is found. No persons of interest are identified. Naki is found in a remote area outside the town, half buried in a mat of Arctic heather. Kala wasn't my online girlfriend, or the catfish the pilot suspected. That was a convenient lie. This time tomorrow, he'd either laugh at me or pat me on the back, depending on how things went. Both eventualities were covered. The plane convulsed as we landed, tires skidding briefly before finding their grip. Then we came to a halt at the terminal, a corrugated outhouse set against a dull, hazy backdrop. "Here we are," he said, grinning through his beard. "Good luck with your woman. You'll need it." I thanked him and disembarked with backpack and camera. The biting cold stabbed me, but I didn't flinch. I inhaled sharply, the icy air burning my lungs, and made my way deeper into the ghost-like outpost of swirling snowflakes, the most remote place I'd ever come to meet a subject. Beyond the airstrip, the snow-covered streets of Mitimatalik were deserted. Dim street lamps illuminated squat, weather-beaten buildings, wide-eyed structures that seemed to huddle together to keep warm and endure the endless night, which had introduced insomnia, sleep paralysis, and nightmares to their eaves. December 10th. Aputi Kanuk, 38, is discovered in his pickup in Whale Cove. The insides of the cab are painted red. Police are baffled. The Inuit sports hundreds of wounds, pinpricks that seem to have punctured the flesh from within. There is nothing untoward in the vehicle, just some strands of heather in the footwell. I passed residences with lights glowing in windows, stores hibernating like frost-covered monuments, and vehicles remade as ice sculptures. I didn't pass people, even though it was midday and as bright as it was going to be for another 24 hours. Nobody was getting their steps in. But that's not to say no one was out. As the snowfall grew thicker and I approached a junction in the road, laughter reached my ears from my destination, Ukpik Tavern, where, according to Sigil, the woman I was seeking should be. A few more steps, and it materialized. A nondescript bar that doubled as a restaurant, dull light spilling through the window. A wooden sign above the door creaked as I pushed through. Inside, I took a moment to shake off the cold and the snow before making my way to a table. The bar was decorated simply, with wooden tables and chairs, and a fireplace burning thick logs. A handful of locals were seated, meeting friends for lunch, during this nighttime reprieve. They eyed me with mild suspicion as I came in. I made a show of checking my camera and placing it on the table like it was sacred. They looked away. Just another rich tourist or hipster blogger come to photograph the northern lights. Boring. A barman with a ducktail beard that somehow looked better than mine sauntered over as I shrugged off my parka. He informed me the bar was closing at 1:30, an hour and a bit from now. He noted my Nikon and the guidebook for neighboring Bylot Island I'd placed on the table. He didn't ask why I was here. I ordered beer and a bowl of caribou stew, then settled down to warm myself and wait. I didn't have to wait long. She came out of the men's room, carrying a mop and bucket, head high as she went behind the bar. The information I'd received had been correct. Not that I doubted it. Sigil was always correct. And though she looked older than 40 and heavier than 180 pounds, she was recognizable as the person who'd been described. Her face was weather-beaten. Strands of gray threaded her braided hair, and the birthmark on her neck was visible above the folds of her jumper. It was her. December 15th. Panic spreads through the Kivalik region as a third body is found. The frozen corpse of Nuvuk Kayuk, 42, is discovered at the foot of a cliff in Chesterfield. It seems he may be the victim of a fall, until he is thawed out and the stab wounds appear. Multiple star-shaped incisions that confirm murder, but there are no clues to be found, except the cluster of heather in his grasp. I received my glass of amber liquid and bowl of meat and veg, which I ate and drank slowly, watching her interact with the locals. She had an infectious laugh and a warm voice. I gathered she'd worked here a while. She seemed kind, not like one who could hurt another. But appearances are deceptive. I knew that better than most. Time crawled as I finished eating. Every so often she'd look in my direction, flash a smile or nod, and I'd look away. I didn't need to make a connection. Not yet. Shortly after 1:15, the locals started getting up to leave. I drained my glass and pulled on my coat. It had been a successful visit. I'd found who I was looking for and gotten a feel for her form. Despite her slight bulk, there was no question she could handle herself. Behind the smiles and laughs, she could wield violence. I paid my bill and left. Outside, it was already black, the brief daylight hours having retreated. The snowfall had ceased, as if scared back into hiding by the night. Pond Inlet was silent, except for the now muted voices of the locals, who slunk out of the tavern behind me, showing less than zero interest in this photo-hunting fool. Stepping onto the stoop of what appeared to be a post office, I took cover in the shadows and fished out my vape. Blood, orange, and charcoal. My flavor of choice. Enough bite to keep me alert, though, of course, I had sigil for that. And as if on cue, to remind or reprimand me, a sudden cackle of noise penetrated my ear, making me wince as I cupped it. It was a garbled message, like always, broken syllables that were difficult to understand, but whose meaning was clear. I was on the right track, and things were escalating. Kala was about to strike again. December 21st. The remote community of Arctic Bay, Qikiqtaaluk, is shaken by the discovery of Panaa Pictu, 39, found dead while camping on the outskirts of town. Her body, exsanguinated, sports familiar stab wounds. A charred stem of heather is found in her campfire's ashes. 4 Inuit are dead, killed in mysterious fashion. The killer remains at large. I'd taken the 3rd pull on my vape when the bar door opened and my target stepped out, wrapped in a sealskin coat. I couldn't see her face, but I knew from her gait it was her. She didn't waste time, stomping off towards the far end of town, where the street lamps petered out and darkness reigned. I gave her a minute's head start. The snow would record her path. She wasn't expecting me, so she wouldn't try to give me the slip. I took another drag and waited for the barman to lock up before setting off. I activated my Nikon's night vision function and kept an eye on its view screen as I followed her tracks. The buildings thinned out as I left town until there was nothing left but rocks and snow. Somewhere ahead was a forest, but I couldn't make it out. What I could make out was a flat, oblong structure surrounded by a chain link fence. I didn't know what the building was, but the footprints led to it. So that's where I went. A hole had been cut in the fence, spliced wires bent back. I ducked to slip through the gap, careful not to snag my Canada Goose parka, then slunk through the snow to the building. What I could now guess was some kind of supply station. It was abandoned, at least for the winter, but its door had been forced to admit 1 guest. 2, as I eased it open. 3, if Kaala's trap had already been set. I winced in anticipation of a squeal. It didn't come, and I was able to enter a cluttered office lit by a battery-powered lantern. Empty crates and barrels filled the space. Paperwork lay scattered on the floor. In one corner was a sleeping bag, a rucksack, and a small heater. A seal skin coat lay next to the heater, which had been plugged in and was starting to glow. Clever. This wasn't her home. She was using this place as a lure. A crash and a yell brought my eyes to the door behind a dusty reception, and I started towards it, depositing my camera on the desk. Thought you could sneak up on me, eh? Thought you could take me like the others? A thud, A cry, a slam. I reached the door, which was slightly ajar, and peered through. I knew you'd find me, you bitch. But guess what? I got ready. In my ear, Sigil was humming, spitting instructions in urgent, guttural tones. I winced and ignored. I knew what to do. Like Twinak Itukalak, I was ready. So I pulled open the door and stepped through. It was a large storage area, illuminated by more lanterns on aluminium shelving units that had been rearranged haphazardly. The shelves, which were presumably used to store produce in normal times, now displayed nothing but flowers. Lots of flowers, potted and in full bloom, which was odd because of the season, and because of what Sigil told me to bring. Killed Nuvuk, killed Panna. Now I'll kill you. For real this time. The words accompanied more thumps and cries, and then something else, an unnatural keening. I peered around one of the shelving units and found the source of the noise. Jovial, happy Twinak from the bar, straddling the Inuit Kala, slamming her head against the floor as she tried to sing a song. A window on the opposite wall was up. That's how Kala had entered. Seeing the flowers would have made her feel safe, given her confidence, inspired bravado. Of course, that's how Twinak had made ready. A second glance at the nearest flower confirmed it. All the potted plants in here were plastic. Shut up, witch. There's nothing here you can use. Twinak slammed Kala's head harder. The dark-haired, younger woman's words faltered, but she quickly resumed her bird-like song, an eerie, chirping sound that made me shiver. Twinak's back was to me. Kaala's eyes found me as I shucked off my bag. She was surprised, but didn't react. I could see in her eyes she was broken. I could see in her face she was weak. She'd been trekking for weeks, through darkness, making her way up from Tukik, stopping at townships on the way. This was her last stop, but she was tired, hungry. The net was closing in, and she'd underestimated the last of her prey. I'd come to help. Hey, I said, startling Twinak as I unzipped my bag. Haven't you hurt her enough? Who the fuck? Your turn. I removed a potted plant of Arctic heather, real, not plastic, from my bag and put it on the floor, then kicked it towards the barmaid with my foot. Twinak's eyes went wide. Kala's fluttered shut, but her cracked lips continued to warble. Stop, Twinak spat, falling away from the plant. I watched as its leaves began to tremble in response to the quickening of Kaala's song. In my time and profession, in the circles I traveled, and amongst the fiends I called my crew, I'd seen my share of weird shit. But I'd never seen anything like this. I'd never known an animist, someone who could control earthy matter with their voice. So this was one for the books. Kala's eyes snapped open, and as she started to sing, shout her words, the plant reacted. Its stems lengthened, stretching toward Twinak like snakes. The soft leaves twisted and hardened, curling into deadly thorns. The petals flared, exposing a dark, pulsing core. Twinak tried to flee, but the heather was fast. Thorny stems wrapped around her limbs, pulling her down. The more she struggled, the tighter they constricted. Ka'ala sat up and sang louder, and the heather responded. Vines forced their way into Tuinak's mouth, grew down her throat, muffling her screams as they choked her. I watched as she convulsed, thorns punching out through her throat. She squeezed her eyes shut against probing stems, but that was the least of her worries. I couldn't see what was happening inside her clothes, but the pool of blood seeping out from under her back told the tale. I stood there and watched for several minutes until she stopped moving and Kala fell silent. Her animist hymn at an end, she collapsed in a heap, fully spent. I went to her, sat behind her, eased her close. She didn't object. She didn't fear me. It was always the way. They could trust me. They knew. I wasn't there to harm them or turn them in. It was the aura of Sigil. They knew I was only there to help, as blood-covered stems of heather slid from Tuinak's mouth. Thorns returned to leaves, and petals drooped. I cradled Kala in my arms. "It's okay," I said, allowing a slug-like tentacle to exit my ear. "My name is Bertram Belasco. I was alerted to your existence when you took your third victim. I run a network dedicated to supporting people like you. Serial killers, for want of a better term. The Mounties haven't pieced things together, but they'll find you. I can get you out. I have a passport for you in my bag, and flights are booked. I can take you to the States. But you have to agree. Do you agree, Kala Piak? Will you join my network and kill for me?" Sometimes they thought about it, weighed the pros and cons, took time to make sure I was legit. Kala didn't. She was in no state, and she didn't care. She simply nodded, eyelids flickering. It's all Sigil needed. It wriggled its tentacle to her throat, slid out a proboscis, and stabbed her. For a moment, Kala's eyes widened in shock. Then, as quickly as it had struck, the tentacle retracted and slunk back inside my ear, having deposited a small lump of matter under her skin, coating her, making her his, ours, a member of the SK network, in which, as an animist, she'd excel. The world was going to become that bit more deadly, and the craving my master had would be fulfilled. November 28th. The peaceful life of Kala Piak comes to an end when 5 friends visit her guest house in Tukik. Initially friendly, their true intentions emerge when they reveal they've seen a video online. Footage secretly recorded by a hiker showing Kala performing animism. Desperate to create a viral video, they pressure her to perform and make them famous. She refuses, and the confrontation turns dark. Threatened with violence, Kala reveals the Eskimo magic she was born with, using a houseplant in self-defense. It starts to strangle Nuvuk. His friends hit her over the head to stop the act. Panicked, thinking her dead, they throw her from a cliff to hide their crime. Kala awakes mid-fall and sings for help. Arctic Heather, at the base of the cliff, answers the call. Her animism, now tainted, has a taste for revenge, and she has the names of 5 who can satisfy it. You're my rock. The bride and groom danced their first dance together. The room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen. Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close. Gosh, no. And whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping." She winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mum and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes. And here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No, I suppose you better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. If I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. He was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids, who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, the only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. "Who's Alan?" Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. "An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off." Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? You can see me, right? "Because you're looking positively radiant tonight," said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. "Sorry, not funny." The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. "It was a little funny," she conceded. He relaxed. "Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony, otherwise you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch." "Okay, well, what's wrong with him then?" Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. "Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about." Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." She shook her head. "Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy." Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. "Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but..." Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. "I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account." Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. "Imogen," slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. "This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is..." Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. "Imogen, she said. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Alan." Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. "Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now." "I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan." Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. "Oh," he said. "Oh," she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. "All right. I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun." She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. Car crash, 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. "I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call that my mum had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling you not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way." Her heart ached for him. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help?" She shook her head. "Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic." She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. "Wow," she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. "Would you like to dance, Imogen?" She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yes, I would, Alan." On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine blebitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958. or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy, I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding. The cursed town. Content warning. Murder, suicide. He walked up through the dusty road which led to the small town of Timmins. It was twilight, and a light wind was blowing. Far away, the crop plantations acquired a greenish-orange color due to the light of the sun. On the other side, one could catch a faint glimpse of the Timmins church, with its tall steeple standing majestically high up in the sky. The yellow-orange hue of the sky washed the town, and the muddy red road was illuminated with a touch of gradient yellow. The whole town looked peaceful, and surprisingly, nobody was outside their houses. He entered the town and looked at the banyan tree in front of him. It had remained much the same. He looked up at the houses and walked towards them. Darkness was falling now. The red-orange hue was slowly swept away, and a dark blue color entered, only with a touch of crimson at its bottom. Shadows fell here and there, creating a spooky atmosphere, and he quickened his pace, as if to avoid the evil spell cast by the shadows of the houses. The moon came up, not too bright, for clouds were starting to surround it from all sides. He glanced upwards and realized that he had to take shelter somewhere. Rainfall could occur any time now. He walked through the dusty and muddy road and looked here around for inns, but there were none. Finally, he found a big apartment, which was deserted. He let out a sigh of relief and walked up the stairs and entered the apartment. It was evident that the apartment was still under construction work. It was not completed. However, years of neglect had withered away the raw smell of the brick walls, and small plants could be seen, growing almost everywhere. All of them had a feeling of evil in them. The brick walls, the plants, the floors, and even the ceiling. It was like they had witnessed a lot of sad events and were telling him not to go further inside the house. The house itself was spooky, with its large corridors and almost no rooms. A huge, round staircase led to the other floors. The grayish appearance of the apartment matched perfectly with his gray and withered t-shirt and pants. He went up the staircase and reached the terrace. It was broad and wide, and one could see the beautiful town stretched before it. He looked down and was surprised to see an old woman with a lantern standing in the doorway of the apartment, waving her hands to call him. He descended the staircase and ran out of the apartment to meet the old woman. The woman was short in stature and had gray hair, with sometimes a tint of black in them. Her face was wrinkled, and she looked at him through her cat-green eyes, piercingly. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "I am a visitor, and I came here for certain business matters. I could not find any inn to spend the night in, so I came here," he said. She looked at him suspiciously, and then said, "Okay, you better come with me. This place is not good, especially at night." He nodded his head and followed the old woman. He was cold with fear and could not understand what was happening. He followed her till they reached a cottage, and the old woman asked him to enter. He went inside and enjoyed the warmth of the fire which was lit. He sat down on a sofa, and the woman came to her with a candle. She placed the candle on the table and handed him a plate. "You must be hungry. Here, have some food. You better not go to the apartment anymore." "Why?" he asked. "It's a long story. I have seen too much of this world to remember happy deeds. Most are evil." "What do you actually mean? Do you want to hear?" "Yes, I do." She took a long, deep breath and then began. "Long ago, when I was about 17 years of age, there used to live a plantation owner named Hamilton. He had a lot of money and was very rich. You see those plantations? All those were Sir Hamilton's. He was not only rich, but kind and generous too. He used to donate with open hands. He had a beautiful wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. However, naturally, his neighbors were very jealous of him and despised him. He did not care that much for that. But one day, his neighbors attacked his family. His daughters were of almost my age then, and the son was only a baby. They killed his daughters and his wife, but somehow Hamilton and his son were able to escape. "Why did not Hamilton inform the police?" he asked. "There was no evidence against the neighbors. He had nothing to do. I later heard that he had fled somewhere to Canada." "But how does it relate to the apartment?" The old woman sighed. Her green eyes glistened, and she said, "The apartment was being made by Hamilton. He wanted to turn it into a hospital." "Yes, but how does that matter anyway?" Rain had started falling heavily, and the fire and candle went out. The 2 people were left in total darkness. However, he could still see the old woman's eyes glistening. The old woman said, "For the past few years, there had been a lot of suicides there. Many girls of around 16 to 17 years are committing suicide there. It all started with the daughter of Mrs. Morpin. She jumped from the terrace you were standing a few minutes ago. The second case was of Mrs. Rayon's daughter. She was found hanging from the chandelier one morning, her face white and terror-stricken. He was taken aback and looked at the old woman with wide and fearful eyes. Lightning struck, illuminating the whole room for a moment, and he could see the old woman's face, ugly, wrinkled with a strong, piercing glance, which was almost witch-like. He wanted to run out of the house, but some strange power kept him rooted to his seat. The old woman said, "You better go to sleep now. I guess you had a very tiresome day." The old woman showed him his bedroom, and he fell down on his bed, immediately asleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he could see the sun shining brilliantly outside. He heaved himself up and went to the living room. The old woman was preparing coffee. She handed him a cup, and he sat down on the sofa. He drank from the cup the delicious, thick cappuccino and felt refreshed. He almost forgot all the horrible incidents from yesterday night. "Where do you want to go today? I can show you the way. It is evident that you are new to this place, as you were talking about inns in here. I have heard about Kingsman's Place here. Can you please take me there?" "Kingsman's Place? Okay, I will. It is a business center here. When do you want to go?" "About 9:30. What do you say? Please prepare a packed lunch for me." "Of course. Get ready then." He went back to his bedroom and took out his suitcase. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was middle-aged, but still, he looked pretty young. He brought out a coat, shirt, and pant, and put it on. He looked the perfect businessman. After having breakfast, the two went out. On the way, they came across the Flint River. There he saw some girls whispering and talking together. One of them was extremely beautiful. Her fair skin with an orange tint made one remember pure milk. Her eyes were a deep blue, and she had beautiful black eyelashes. Her cheeks were pink, and her lips were a light red. Her mass of curls was thrown at her back, and she wore a pretty green dress. Her hands were well-toned, and her legs were slender and well-shaped. She looked a pretty picture. He stared at her for some time, and then she turned to the old woman, and pointing to the girl, he asked, "Who is that girl?" The old woman glanced at the girl and then said, "She is Mr. Trudeau's daughter." "Pretty, isn't she?" "Yes," he said. "What is her age?" "About 17. He sighed and gestured at the old woman to move forward. They reached Kingsman's Place, and the old woman left him there with his lunchbox. He did not wait there. As soon as the old woman was out of sight, he started running. He did not stop until he reached the old building. He entered and went up to the terrace. The terrace was absolutely empty. Despite being so large, the parapets were very low, and there were high risks of falling to death in case of an accidental slip. Unlike the rest of the house, almost no plants were there on the terrace due to some unknown reason. He roamed here and there on the terrace. He stepped very carefully, and whenever he looked down, he was sick at the sight of houses so far down below. He hated heights and was afraid of them. He went downstairs and waited. "You know, Laura, I will go to Grandma Fontaine's house today." The words kept ringing in his mind. To reach Grandma Fontaine's house, she had to cross this building. There she was coming. Alone. Nobody was with her. He waited silently, and as soon as she came in front of the apartment, he gripped her hand and pulled her inside. Before she could scream, he put a handkerchief under her nose, and smelling the chloroform, she fell unconscious. He now prepared for it. He dragged her upstairs to the terrace and carefully washed her face. He then threw her down the parapet, and she landed with a loud thud sound. Dead. Yes, she was dead. Blood was flowing from her, and her pretty face was peaceful. He quickly fled from the place before anybody could see him. He did not return to the old woman's house. He kept walking towards the outskirts of the town. It would take him almost 3 hours to get out. He had seen his own sisters and mother get killed in front of him. Those Morpins, Rayons, Trudeaus, and Greys have killed them out of jealousy. He and his father had somehow fled. But after some time, his father also died. He died saying, "Kill Morpin, kill Trudeau, kill Rayon, kill Grey. Don't let them live." He had done that. He had killed all of them, except Grey's daughter. He would be back for her after the next 4 years. Yes, he would not let her live. They do not deserve to live. They had destroyed his life. He would destroy theirs. He would not let them be happy when his own happiness had been snatched away from him. Never. He looked back at the town. It was twilight yet again. The town looked peaceful, but he could hear faint sounds of crying. Let them cry. They will have to cry again after 4 years. He turned and walked away from the town as darkness fell and made the town silent. Witches get stitches. The tea house was full of women sipping from cups and pouring from various teapots. Mona, Heptonstall, winced. She didn't have any money to buy a drink. She didn't have any money at all. She was only a young schoolgirl. But the sight of all these women put her at ease a little. And God knew that she needed somewhere to feel safe right now. Mona ducked into the shop, past the few tables outside, occupied by little old ladies sitting in the shade. The aroma inside the tea house was exotic and familiar, exciting and cozy. Steam wafted from the rims of mugs, none of which were matching. It was as though the owner had put serious effort into ensuring all crockery sets were different. Women sat clustered into groups and pairs, chatting away. Some sat solo, unconcerned with their lack of company. They smiled, contented, and closed-eyed, into the sunshine while sipping their brews. On the walls, various posters and flags hung. There was something about flowers and plants here. There was something about animals being friends there. The symbol for females, the circle above a cross, was here. Rainbow flags and a flag with light blue, pink, and white stripes hung there. Plant pots housed a forest's worth of greenery, growing in every direction. The flowers crawled up stakes and dangled from shelves, and dog-eared books about cooking, herbology, feminism, and equal rights were everywhere. Mona's thudding heart slowed, and her stitched-up eyebrow settled into a steady pulse. This tea house was a nice place, a good place, one that she imagined that grubby Gilbert wouldn't think to check. She glanced over her shoulder out the window into the sun-drowned street outside. Grubby Gilbert Boyd came plodding along as if on cue, a frown etched upon his bovine countenance. His pot belly bounced as he slowed to a trot, his head jerking around like a pigeon's. A bead of sweat trickled down his forehead. Beneath his food-stained shirt, his chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His eyes passed over the tea house, and he didn't seem to register it was there. Then he moved on. A few seconds later, Gilbert had passed the shop and disappeared down the street. She couldn't help but grin at the boy's stupidity. If only it were always that easy to escape his chubby fingers. Everyone, her teachers and parents, said he only picked on her because he liked her. He pushed her and pulled her and tripped her up because he fancied her. To Mona, this had made no sense whatsoever. First, why would you do those things to somebody you liked? Second of all, what kind of excuse was that? She had to endure this unhappiness because of the reason behind his actions. Besides, even if he had asked her out, she didn't think he was all that interesting or good-looking. She wasn't interested. When she'd split open her eyebrow after he'd stuck his leg out last week, she hoped that'd be the end. Alas, grubby Gilbert didn't give up. She stepped to the side to watch him trot down the street. She walked right into a table whilst she gazed in the opposite direction. Mona squeaked, timid like a mouse, as time slowed around her. The table toppled over. The mugs crashed to the floor and disintegrated, spilling hot tea over the rug. The flowery doily drifted to the ground, where the liquid stained it brown. The two women flinched backwards from the carnage and squealed. They escaped the flying china unscathed, but lost their beverages to gravity. Mona gasped, wide-eyed, hands raised in self-defense. Oh no. Oh no. 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 This accident was not good. Not good at all. She had no money, nothing with which she could make amends. She tried to think, speak, and act. But fear rooted her to the spot. A woman with a tea towel draped over her shoulder came marching up to the scene. The woman was tall and had an out-there fashion sense. Her long hair, which she'd tied up into a bun, she'd dyed electric blue. Her eyebrows and her eyes were coffee brown. Tattoos crawled up both arms, under the sleeves of her dress, and up the sides of her neck. The dress was black, with a flowery design, both gothic and summery. A hoop dangled from her nose, and more piercings than Mona had ever seen dotted her ears. She took the tea towel and dropped it into the puddle, which disappeared. Before Mona could blink, the table was upright, its doily pristine, and the mug shards were gone. The blue-haired woman called to a younger girl who was busy behind the counter. "Sabrina, another ginger tea and a peppermint tea for this table, please." On the house, of course. Mona shriveled before the sight of her. Adults always seemed big. Despite being no taller than the other grown-ups, this woman seemed like a giantess. Some unknown qualities made her presence more clear. She squeezed her hands together, averted her eyes, and awaited the tongue lashing. "I'm Alice Wallaker, and this is my tea house. Do you mind answering a few questions? Oh God, oh God, oh God. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm such an idiot. I'm such the dark night." A shadow of a figure was running in the dark. All around were tall trees, and only a small fraction of the moon's rays got through the canopy. The ground was a black void, with no difference between the dirt and the tree roots. A pack of wolves howled in the distance. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled like a toddler playing with pots and pans. Under all of that was a low mumble, rhythmic, like a drum cadence, but ghostly in origin. The figure trips. Eli. The scene quakes. Eli. The moon disappeared. Elijah! Blinding fluorescent light replaced the woods. 13-year-olds Eli and Tyler were sitting in the mall food court, eating dinner across from each other. Eli's heart was pounding in his ears, and his hands trembled. Tyler put her hands on his. "Eli, what did you see?" Eli repeatedly blinked back at her as the fog lifted from his head. "I don't really know." "Come on," she said, slinging on a side bag as she raised from her chair. "You can think about it on our way home. I don't want to miss the bus." Without a word, Eli cleaned up their table and carried the tray away. As soon as his hand was free, he reached for her hand. They walked away from the tables, with Tyler locking her arm from Eli's swinging. Not too many people were left in the mall. There were a few stragglers around the pop-up stands, but most were lacing their arms through jacket sleeves by the exits. However, two men, a twig-like one with close to the head African curls, and a log-like one with slicked hair, mostly to one side, didn't fit in either group. They stood off the side, away from everyone else, surveilling, looking for something. Their cookies and cream vibe didn't make Tyler divert their path. She was right until they stepped into their way. "Excuse us, Tyler Woodlock and Elijah Krieger?" the twig one asked through a British accent. Tyler pulled Eli closer. "No, sorry," she answered, starting to walk around them, with her and Eli's fingers turning red. "Government agents?" The other man stopped them, flipping open his budget case. "Miss Woodlock." The Brit slid closer, as Tyler gave out a nervous laugh. She pulled it together with a devious smirk. "All right, agents." She stepped closer. "But one thing first." "Yes," the man said, putting his budget back. Tyler gave the Brit, the fitter one, a stiff kick in the shin. With him on the floor and his partner stunned, she yelled, "Run, Eli," giving Eli a push start. Eli sprinted off, getting a head start as Tyler toppled over a supply case. He headed for the loading docks, a path Tyler forced him to memorize for an emergency like this. As ordered, he ran without looking back. He nearly ran off the truck port in his mindset. He jumped down. Falling on his hands, he looked like a frog. He couldn't find the strength to stand, but he walked, half crawled, to the rear of the building. Collapsing against the brick, he took his chance to look back. She wasn't there. He stayed twisted around the corner, waiting for Tyler. All of a sudden, bright light beamed onto him. Drawing Eli's attention, the voice called out, "Stay there!" They boomed like a drill sergeant. He clambered to his feet and did the total opposite as the voice commanded. A stampede of boots followed Eli as he jotted into the wooded area on the other side of the loading lane. The fall night grew darker as he was chased farther in the woods. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled. Their movement shifted and blocked the moon as if in a game of peekaboo. This and the uneven ground made Eli bobble like a pinball. The voice rang out again. "Get him! Don't let him get away." It allured him to look back. A light show of flashlights was going on behind. Even with all the light, however, the people remained shadows. A gopher tunnel tripped Eli up a bit. As he looked up, a pair of amber eyes, low to the ground, stared at him from a few yards away. The progression of howls following the encounter made Eli run fast. He couldn't hear the boots anymore. He would turn his head a few degrees before forcing it straight. The last one sent him flying into the ground. Tyler peered over a row of bushes. Eli laid on the ground, with only his chest moving up and down. As soon as she raised from her position, 2 men came into view. One went to Eli's side, and the other pulled out a radio. Asset found. About 4 clicks due east of the loading dock. The radio guy looked around the perimeter as the second man searched Eli's pocket. Tyler fished around in her bag. In the dark, the inside of her bag was a void. She felt cold metal as more men appeared. The one left Eli's side. "The cards aren't here, sir." Eli let at a moan as he began to stir. "Bring him. We'll find out soon enough where they are." He turned and started the procession away. Radio and Pocket Man gave each other a glance before Pockets threw Eli over his shoulder. The remaining men followed. Tyler took her hand out of her back. She fell to her knees, with her hands on her face. As the first tears started falling, she wiped them away with her fists clenched. She ran back to the mall, heading towards the parking lot. Her head bubbled back and forth, looking at the cars and people. Losing her structure, she fell back on her knees. She started crying again, right before her ears perked up. Snapping her head around, she saw the 2 agents from inside. "We lost, ma'am," she heard the agent who threw his badge in her face. They were ready to run. A grin grew across her face. She spined back, with her attention being grabbed by the rear of the car she fell in front of. The license read, CA exempt 387690. She had seen enough of those when the police raided their Romani dwellings. The odds of that being their car, she didn't know. Not did she know the odds of them automatically unlocking it far enough away that she could climb into the trunk before they were close enough to see. The 2 agents and their unknown guest arrived at their motel on the outskirts of town almost an hour after Eli was taken. The building wasn't too big, just 2 rows with 8 or so doors each. Behind each were a single room and a bath. The agents went first. Tyler waited until she couldn't hear them anymore before pushing out the back row cushion. Sitting on the floor of the car, she watched as they entered a room with the number 6 on the door. She opened the door carefully so she wouldn't hit the next car. In the same manner, she closed it without a sound. She strategically stepped as she reached back into her bag. After peering into the room's window, she saw the 2 agents with their backs to the door. There seemed to be nothing but a wall in front of them. But that didn't bother Tyler. She walked right in and pulled her hand out of her bag before slamming the door shut. The agents jumped if shots had been fired. They found that they weren't too far off. Dropping their phone, they were face to face with a gun barrel. "Hello again, miss." "Woodlock," one agent said through his British accent as they snuck for their weapons. "Don't patronize me," she said, cocking her gun. "Do you think you can pull yours before I shoot the both of you? I've already proved I have grace under pressure." They both bring their hands forward. "What do you want?" the other one asked. "Well, Agent Vincent Petrov, I'm thinking about a trade." Flaunting his arrogant British accent, he asked. "What would you have that we would?" Cutting him off, Tyler pulled out a deck of tarot cards. "Really? I might be a child, but I'm not an idiot." "That still doesn't answer my question," Vincent said. "I want Eli back." "Excuse me, even if I believe for a second, you're not with the men who took him. You bring him back to me, and you get these no-so-meaningless cards, and we all live happily ever after." The agents gave each a glance. "Let me make this easier. You do this, or I shoot you, and go on my merry way." Eli was groggy, teetering between awake and asleep for the car ride, though no one could tell through the blindfold, nor from his position in the trunk. They had tried his wrists and ankles to stop the little fight he had in him. No kicking, no hitting, no running. More helpless than he was without Tyler. He was asleep when the car stopped, but was jarred awake when one of the men yanked him out. Being bobbled around, his face was red and breathed deeply, trying to keep dinner in. The only relief came when he was dropped to the floor. After the bang of the door, Eli was left to wait once more in the dark. He pulled at his ropes, only stopping when the burning turned into paper-cut sensations. No closer to freedom, he crumbled, stopped straining, stopped fighting, stopped holding it together. Back at the motel, Tyler sat crisscrossed on the first bed from the door, yanking her locket back and forth on its chain. She stared at the agents that sat on the other side of the room. She tried to hear what they were saying, but they put the same effort into the opposite. "What are we going to do, Miles?" Vincent asked. "Play the game. Easier said than done. We know when, where, and a fair idea of by who. The who is what scares me. I would be more scared of the lass if we don't." "I agree with Agent Walker." A woman, dressed in a white skirt suit with her dark hair in a spiral braid, said just inside the room. "Ms. Isles?" Vincent jumped out of his seat. Tyler did the same. She stared at the woman, jotting a glance at the door, then back. No one heard the door open or closed. "Hello, miss." "Woodlock," Ms. Isles said, raising her hand. "Hi," Tyler said, more like a question than snipe, without shaking her hand. "Well, do you want the good news or the bad news?" "Good would be best," Vincent toddled. Isles looked at Tyler. "Find the boy. Bring him back. Finish your original mission," she said through a smile. She began to walk away. She already had her hand on the doorknob before any of them stopped her. "What about the bad news?" Miles shouted. "Work with her, Walker. Work with her," she said, leaving before and without argument. Eli had no idea how long he was asleep for, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with a blinding light. He stretched out to find his legs and arms unbound. Panicked and joyed, he shuddered and jostled. He missed the hand on the wrist. A shadow eclipsed the bright light. "Do you mind not moving?" The voice sounded familiar. With the light masked, Eli could start to see the room. First, the man kneeling in front of him, graying hair, flannel button-up shirt, and placid blue eyes. Then small red spots on the gray cement floor. And last, white bandage roll, some on his right wrist, and the man wrapping more onto his left. "I think you've bled enough on my floor for today," the man said, finishing his work. "Your floor? Don't be put off by the casual dress. I'm the boss here, and that's why I can offer you this. You answer all my questions, and you can go home to your gypsy family, to your sweet wife, Tyler, without any more harm." "What do you want to know?" Eli asked as he sat up. "Why don't we start with something simple? Why did you run away from me at the loading docks?" said the man who blared a flashlight in Eli's eyes earlier that night. Vincent sat at the small two-person table, glaring at a street map and a calculator. "How is it going, Vince?" Miles asked, leaning over Vincent's shoulder. "Not great. Knowing that they took Elijah 75 minutes ago, and assuming they stayed within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit, they can be anywhere within and around 50 miles away from the mall. That's a big area. You don't know the half of it." "Miss Woodlock." "Tyler!" she yelled at him. "My name's Tyler." "Tyler." He put his hands up halfway. "Can you give us anything? Car model? Direction? Anything?" "I was a little busy, trying not to get caught myself. Trying to find you fools. If we try to search all of this," Vincent pulled Miles closer and lowered his voice, "we won't get to him in time." "Don't talk like that," Tyler yelled, with a little cry behind it. "You start talking like that, and things will end that way." She fell back onto the bed, with her hands on her face. Miles glared down at Vincent, with his arms crossed. He kept that position as he walked over to the bed. Sitting next to her, he put his arm around her, with an air bubble between them. "Thanks," she said, whipping her hands out from her face. "It's getting late. Why don't you rest for a bit? We don't want our sharpshooter's eyes heavy. I've been one for the last 10 years. But," she paused, bringing up her watch on her right wrist. "Watch," she continued, jumped off the bed. "What?" Miles followed her towards Vincent. "Watch." She started searching her bag. "I got Eli a watch for our first anniversary. He never takes it off." She presented the watch's instructions. "And it has GPS." "Anniversary?" they asked. During their time together, the man asked Eli an array of questions. Most about trivial personal things to get Eli relaxed and uncoil from his balled-up position. It was working, too. He was as relaxed as if he was home. His eyes glassed over as the questions droned on. The room faded away. A dark place appeared. A spotlight shines on the center. A glint of metal moved in from the bottom. A gun, revolver, a white hand, a flannel sleeve. The hand snapped the bullet holder back into the gun. It aimed. Destroying the image, the shot fired caused Eli to scream and hold his ear. His ears were still ringing when the man tried to calm him down. Eli saw what he expected was on his own face, on the man's. The man removed Eli's hands. His mouth moved, but Eli couldn't hear it. He yanked himself away. "Why are you asking me all these questions? What do you want?" The man had a blank face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. After straightening his shirt, he said, "You have something that belongs to me." "I don't have anything." Eli shuddered. "Not now, but..." He exhaled heavily through his nose. "Tyler gave you something. A set of tarot cards." "I don't know where they are," he stuttered. "Well, it's the last question you have to answer, so give it a good thought. They could be anywhere. In the woods where you chased. Back in the mall where the other two did. With," he said, trying to put the brakes in his mouth. "Sir, you know where they are." No, I don't." "Yes, you do." He pulled a gun from his back waistband. "Tell me." Eli's mouth opened, but the only crashing noises came. The sound made both of them jot their attention towards the door. The man gritted his teeth. The other two. Staring down at his gun, he weighed it in his hand before bringing it down on Eli's head. Eli fell to the floor again. The last thing he saw before the backs of his eyelids was the man's black shoes walking out the door. The black gave way to wisps, at first merging into cacti and sand. They whirled by through the view from a car window. Tyler sat on the opposite side, smiling back. In the front seat sat Miles and Vincent. The whole picture felt loving and had a dream-like glow. It faded into a face full of fabric. Before he could freak out like his earlier ones, a hand touched his shoulder. "You're all right now. You're safe," Tyler cooed. In a quick movement, Eli raised to hug her, nearly bringing them to the floor. Regaining her structure, she hugged back. In their embrace, Eli missed Miles and Vincent standing off to the side, smiling down at them. Better fires. "Dear Jay, I lit the mailbox on fire when I saw you kissing Em. Others told me that when feeling too much, one might hurt oneself. There might be cuts along the arm or starvation. I had no inclination toward self-harm. From a very young age, I understood that the world does enough to you. Why do any more to yourself? I saw you kissing Em behind the cafetorium, and I ran all 7 blocks home. On the way, I saw the Gozer's blue mailbox, and I knew it had to burn. One match around the base, and it went up quickly along with whatever mail was inside of it. The red flag was up, and I did it anyway. Later that night, I attended a slumber party and started the rumor that you had done it, that I often saw you lighting ants on fire with a magnifying glass as though that was a natural origin for someone who would eventually begin setting better fires. Some of the girls believed me. Some didn't care. One told me that you kissed her after her shift at Pizza Grace, and your mouth tasted like a fountain drink. I watched her after she fell asleep. I visualized her waking up to find her hair on fire, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to hurt anyone, not even you. When I asked you to the dance, you told me that you'd already agreed to go with G, even though that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, because I knew enough about you by then. When you lied, your left eyebrow would twitch. Maybe it still does. Do you still lie? Would you tell me if you did? I told you that I understood and wished you well. I knew that you were going to ask G as soon as I was out of sight. Then, if you changed your mind, you'd simply pick someone else to bring. What you were never going to do is show up with me. Not me, the girl who had to wear baggy tops to hide how much she developed between sophomore and junior year. Not me, the know-it-all who the teachers had stopped calling on, because she always knew the path Napoleon took on his first campaign and the first 15 numbers of pi. I don't think intelligence was a turnoff for you. On the contrary, I think you wanted me to be smarter. You wanted me to be so smart that kissing me would be like allowing dark matter down your throat to rip you apart from the inside. You held me to a different standard. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought you just wanted to kiss the prettiest girls in the school. I never investigated what your deeper motives might have been. The day you told me you couldn't take me to the cotton candy dance, I went to the greeting card store in town and set fire to all the get well cards. They were at the back of the store, and there was only one cashier working. I made quite a pile, struck the match, and walked right out. By the time the smoke alarm went off, I was already watching from down the street. Lucky for me, greeting card establishments don't have security cameras. I went to a pool party the following weekend and told everyone there that you'd confessed to me a year ago that you hated greeting cards. Seeds were planted. A freshman who was at the party told me that you'd been putting removable tattoos in her locker. Hearts with knives in them and mermaids who refused to smile. She pulled down her bathing suit bottom and showed me where she'd placed one of the tattoos. It looked like Joan of Arc tied up and suffering her great punishment. I think you're right, she whispered to me in between bites of a burnt hamburger. I think he might be obsessed with fires. Why else would he give me this? The world will give you all the answers you want if you know exactly how to phrase the questions. On the way home from the pool party that day, I saw you in your front yard, mowing the lawn without a shirt on. I waved to you, and you waved back. You flexed for me, and then laughed. I saw a clean line of sweat going down your back to the gray t-shirt that was tucked into your red shorts. I wanted to cover myself in grass and let you run over me. It took me a moment to realize that my hand was still raised in a frozen greeting. You had stopped my time. You'd put me in a deep freeze. Only one thing could dissolve it. The day before graduation, I burned down the school. Part of me knew that eventually it would come to that. I'd used my allowance every week to buy kerosene, matches, bottles, rags, and any other accelerant I could find. The man at the hardware store questioned me about it early on, but I told him that teenage girls were using these types of things to help with our hormones. He seemed perplexed, but no man over 40 wants to know why teenage girls are doing any of the things they do. The next time I came in, he'd set aside some paint thinner for me. It was on sale, 2 for 1. That's what I used in the second floor bathrooms. There was no commencement that year, no caps, no gowns. The only thing thrown up in the air was the spray of a fireman's hose. Students gathered around the periphery of the school. Some cried. I held my homeroom teacher as she asked why anyone would do something like this. I knew that the two of you were writing inappropriate notes to each other between periods. She must have justified it by telling herself that you were mature for your age. And maybe she was right. I try not to condemn anyone if I can help it. The worst condemnation of all has already occurred. The day of the school fire was also the day of the harvest. Everything I'd put into the ground was ready to be reaped. Rumors about your love of starting fires were too widespread to ignore, even though, in many ways, You were the town's favorite son. Your father had been the star linebacker for the football team back when he was in school. Your mother was valedictorian. You were going to do great things, and you were going to go far, and you were going to kiss every girl you wanted to kiss, and never give me more than a wave or a flex of your muscles only to laugh at me for staring. All of that got burned up and turned to rubbish. You went to jail for the very first time. When you got out, you couldn't find a job. Your parents disowned you. You couldn't even find a woman gullible enough to take you in, because by then, you reeked of smoke. Soon, you were dealing drugs and holding up food marts and gas stations. I lost track of how often you were in and out of prison, but I know you're there now, and I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for the part I played. I'm sorry for every match I struck. I'm sorry you didn't see that I could have learned more. I could have caught on faster. I could have bloomed had you only allowed me some light. When you get out, I plan to be waiting for you. I'll pick you up and you can come stay with me. You can mow my lawn. You don't have to give me anything, just the respect I was owed back when we were children. Back when you thought a little cold water would put me out. You never knew that I was electric, did you, Jay? You never tasted my grease. You never thought to smother me. A little cold water. What was that going to do? I'll be standing at the gates when they release you. I'll bring the cigarettes you like. I'll light the first one. Then, I want a kiss. A nice, long kiss. I want to taste the emission. I want you to fill me up with smoke until I feel as though I'm never going to breathe again. Just another dead girl underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article published by a local newspaper reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie, something with a C though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl. The one who got scared at every creak in the dark. The one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her, before the trip, had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party, and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in, enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite, in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater, the moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. "Watch it, mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw," he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. Oh, please, CO. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf. His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. "That will do, officer," a new voice says. "I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights." I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... that's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. "Leave me alone with my client, if you please." "Not a good idea, buddy," the guard says, glancing at me. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course I do," the man snaps. "I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again?" The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick, gray fur. Client, eh? Funny. I don't remember hiring a lawyer. The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. "You haven't, yet, but I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say." "Why's that?" I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. "Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars," I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me. And that is precisely why you want me to represent you. A positively oily grin stretches his lips. Allow me to introduce myself. 2 fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. Mr. R, attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused. The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship. Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. Okay, I say, with a flick of an ear. Lawyer, now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you. Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R it is for now. For that matter, what would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available. But perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story? Now, I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay, whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah. Got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. And the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part, but I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's the... oh, what do they call it? The moral. That's right. The moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why? You said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asked suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing and, well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison, after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt, even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather, a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting, sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim, a weak, pathetic, mewling victim, and all so he can exploit my villainy for cash. I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise. Literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim. Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain, and to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next Little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf. I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So, even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story.